Вітаємо вас на українській телемережі «Контакт». Я Марта Чурлович. І ми сьогодні продовжуємо наш телетон на підтримку багатолітньої праці каритативного фонду «Help Us Help» на благо дітей-сиріт України, позбавлених батьківської і соціальної опіки в цей надзвичайний час війни.
Сьогоднішній телетон проводимо по цілій Канаді, і тут в офісі фонду Help Us Help в Торонто добровольці чекають на ваші телефони і на вашу фінансову підтримку. Ми просимо негайно телефонувати на телефон +1 855 543 2129 і зголосити ваш щедрий дарунок на користь дітей-сиріт з України.
Заки познайомимо вас із жертводавцем чудової праці, поправлення здоров'я і психіки бідних дітей України, маємо нагоду показати вам продовження фільму про конкретну працю каритативного фонду «Help Us Help» в Україні у праці організування неймовірних літніх таборів у Карпатах для дітей-сиріт України.
The workshops were implemented. These kids were exposed to structure and learning different traits and learning new material that potentially might interest them in their future careers. I mean, 2 weeks is a very short period of time, but when you plant a little seed and you give the proper reinforcement, the proper encouragement, and you find what is truly theirs, because we have such a variety of different workshops, maybe one thing won't work for you, but some other workshop will.
I'm also happy when I see them to come back and help. So they've learned that not only do you take, but you have to give back to the community, which is probably one of the most important things we can teach them in Ukraine.
It's so nice to look around and you see your counselors are your previous kids that came when they were little tiny, 8-year-olds, and now they're running workshops, they're taking on leadership roles, they're the next generation of guidance counselors.
Many of them will tell you that if it weren't for Help Us Help the Children, they probably would have been in jail, or they probably would have not taken the wrong path in life and landed up without a family, and the whole pattern of their children growing up in orphanages would have repeated.
And now they're teaching that the younger generation who unfortunately are in the same situation. They let those kids know that it's okay. Look, I was in that situation. This is what helped me. This is what I took from this program. And here I am sharing what I know, my knowledge, so that you can be a better person, a better you.
Help Us Help the Children also offers a university scholarship program. The orphans receive a monthly stipend and attend job-finding seminars. None of this would happen without the Canadian and Ukrainian sponsors, the volunteers, and their children.
5, 6, 1, 2.
A lot of the Canadian diaspora who have come and visited this camp think it's probably one of the best camps where their children can learn, one, about Ukraine.
And for them, it's kind of like a win-win situation, because they've learned so much about Ukraine in Canada, and we're so blessed to have such a great community with Ukrainian schools and churches and scouts groups.
Ukraine is not an abstract anymore, it's concrete. These are real children. It's not something you read or see on YouTube or in a video. They're actually children that you can touch and hug and see them, change and evolve in 2 weeks. And I think that also changes the Canadian, Ukrainian kids that come here to help. It's hard every year. And every year you figure you're not going to have enough money raised, or who's going to give money this year. But you realize that at the end of it, you realize that there's a whole bunch of kids that have gotten so much positive out of these camps that you look back and you go, yeah, all that hard work was worth it.
If we had a bigger, let's say, army of volunteers and more resources to create more programs and opportunity, I think that's where we can expand. We can definitely take on more kids, maybe do more camps at a time.
We could take more kids on scholarships. We could do more widow sessions. We could do more PTSD sessions. God, there's such a need right now for all that. But it depends on how much we raise. Every time it's all about how much can we raise.
And the sponsors, I mean, it's an overwhelming feeling knowing that, you know, there's these people in Canada who care. Let's say they can't necessarily come and visit our camp, but financially they can support us because they know how important it is to put this generation on their feet and make sure they're okay when they move forward and progress through their lives.
You know, there's always a domino effect. You do one good thing, some people will pick up on those ideas and they will follow through with the same ideas in other parts, and that's how stuff spreads in Ukraine.
Карпати дійсно чудове місце для поправлення здоров'я і психіки бідних дітей України. Ми дуже просимо вас негайно дзвонити на телефон +1 855 543 2129 і зголосити вашу щедру пожертву на поправлення здоров'я і психіки дітей України.
Тепер маємо велику честь вітати на нашому телетоні одного з головних жертводавців чудового діла праці на здоров'я і психіки бідних дітей України, Christian Borys of Saint Javelin. Christian, why did you choose Help Us Help as your initial $500,000 recipient?
Basically, before the war started, I started Saint Javelin. So I had an understanding of what was about to happen. And I used to be a journalist. So during that time, when I was a journalist and I was living in Ukraine, I got invited to go to see what Help Us Help actually did. And this was 2015. And I saw the power of what they were doing. So I spent time with not just the kids at summer camps, but also soldiers who were undergoing rehabilitation in the mountains, and like climbing Hoverla together, and not just the soldiers but also the wives and the mothers and the kids of soldiers who had been killed since 2014 when the war first started. So when I understood that the full-scale invasion was about to happen, I started Saint Javelin, and my goal was to try to raise money for those kids who were participating in those camps and those kids who had lost their mothers and their fathers since 2014. And it was just it was a very simple decision for me. As Saint Javelin started to grow really fast, I just wanted to do whatever I could to help support those people.
Why is it important for others to support Help Us Help?
I think it's important to support Help Us Help because you're supporting the most vulnerable people in Ukraine. These are kids who are at orphanages. They don't have the resources that even orphans in Canada do, right? We've seen what Russia has done. Russia has basically kidnapped children from orphanages across Ukraine, and what Help Us is doing, what they have been doing for decades and what they will be doing for decades in the future, is helping those most vulnerable people in Ukraine. So I think it's extremely, extremely important, not just to support the military, but to also support civil society with what Help Us is doing.
Запрошуємо вас відгукнутися на виклик Christian Borys, підтримати та розвинути проект літніх таборів та опіки і доброї ласки для дітей-сиріт України. Ми дуже просимо вас негайно дзвонити на телефон +1 855 543 2129 і зголосити вашу щедру пожертву на поправлення здоров'я і психіки потребуючих дітей з України. Проект Help Us Help має вже 30 років. Після перерви покажемо, як конкретно цей проект розвивався крок за кроком.